Good evening and welcome to Flat Earth United Kingdom. Joining me this evening is Karlee Sunshine. How are you doing, Karlee?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me.
It's a real pleasure. This will be a bit of a weird one for me because there's been no lead up to the show. So we've not had masses of conversations beforehand. We've had a few chats on Skype, a few nice exchanges in the comment section of YouTube videos, and that's pretty much it.
Yep. I think maybe we talked a little while back on like Facebook Messenger or something. When I have a habit of, when I want to become friends with someone, I reach out to them and also try to, send a private message so it's not, I'm just not a random person asking to be their friend, try to make some kind of connection. So I think we talked a little bit a while back on private messenger, but yeah, we haven't really chatted, through Skype or anything a whole lot.
It's one of those, it's a weird one. We watch each other's videos. You get a feeling, I talked about this earlier, like you know
Yeah.
the person. Really, you know what they've presented on a video.
Yep. I know, I almost feel, it's almost like an awkward feeling because I feel the same way. I feel like I know these people when I watch their video logs or I watch their content videos, but then when I sit down and actually talk to them, and we're not face to face, but we're actually having dialogue, it's like, this is kind of funny because we haven't done this before, but it's really nice. It just is a whole new connection, I believe.
Well, I mean, we've doubled on it already, which is Facebook. That's where you're the most prevalent. I mean, you got a couple of thousand friends on there, I noticed earlier. It's a huge number of people to be connected to.
Yeah, and I can tell you when I first started Facebook, I absolutely did not want it to, get that big. But ever since the flat Earth community has started, and I decided to keep taking steps forward and getting involved in Facebook groups and actually becoming brave enough to have a content channel and things like that and getting on these hangouts, more and more people want to connect with me. And it's kind of like when I first started, I wanted to connect with people that I felt like I resonated with and I understood where they were coming from. And I felt like maybe they had something to teach me or I could teach them something. So I feel like the more I kind of gain courage, that I need to kind of reach out to more people and allow myself to be there if someone needs me. So a friends list keeps growing and the groups keep growing, which is, I think there's nothing wrong with that. I love it, actually.
I mean, it's very interesting to me because I tend to steer clear of Facebook because I find it to be a bit insidious, but I see lots of flat Earth information come through on email. So although I don't necessarily go into the chats and into the comments, I get the updates and will read the emails. They're quite handy. But I steer clear because it scares me a little bit. So to see somebody who's sort of pioneering a nice Discord within that platform, because it's a social platform after all, it's not really designed to explore the shape of the Earth, but people like you are actually doing that on that platform. It's amazing.
Well, and honestly, when I first started getting into flat Earth, I did more of it just on my own and didn't even realize that flat Earth was available as far as an information source, or even I want to say almost like support groups when it comes to the Facebook groups. I didn't know that was available for months and months. And I will tell you, I mean, there are avenues out there on Facebook that you can take that really is like, I feel like the wrong road to go down, because all those groups want to do is just fight and bicker, and I wouldn't even call it debating. They literally just want to get on there and spew hate at each other because they're angry. They're either angry that they've been lied to, or they're angry that someone's telling them they've been lied to, So I think whenever I kind of got into the community as far as the Facebook, when it came to flat Earth and truth in general, I decided I wanted to make my own group and or groups that were different, that were very informational, where people could share their observations and their documentations and their experiments, and even just how they're feeling and how they're coping with the truth, or maybe being lied to all their life. So they had that place to go that was safe, instead of it being just a nasty group where everybody just argues and fights. So I feel like that's maybe where I've pioneered more, is giving people basically a safe room to go to so that they can learn and share, and then take that information and go share that with your friends and family. Become confident in what you're learning and then go out there and spread it out in the real world.
That was going to be the next question. When you say spread it out, are these closed groups or are they groups that will permeate the whole of Facebook?
Some of them, what I consider my baby is called Flat and Happy, and I know that's a funny name, but I came up with it, I guess almost like it's been more than a year ago, and the name just stuck, and I thought it was funny. But that one is a closed group, but I made that specifically so that people could feel safe and going there and not be harassed by someone who wanted to debate them, that their family and friends couldn't necessarily see what they're sharing, so they could just share their information and their experiments and get information from other people without being afraid that it's getting out to their friends and family. I know that sounds weird, but on the flip side, oh, are you still there, Nathan? Oh, thank you. On the flip side, I do run also some groups that are just like groups. Some groups are open so that if you did want to share publicly, you can. So there's the whole gambit of different, ways to share.
And have you seen a progression then in the? I'm more interested. I will come back to Flat and Happy because it's one of those, But in the public arena, have you seen an improvement? Has there been? I'm going to use this word, a normalization in talking about flat Earth on Facebook? Would you say?
I mean, sometimes I can just kind of go by what I see on my private page, and I mean, you do get some harassment and you get some bad feedback, but every once in a while you do have someone that is definitely following you quietly. And I've had lots of friends and family on the side come up to me like, I really kind of want to talk about this flat earth thing that you post about all the time, or maybe just about something else that I post about as far as truth in this world that isn't shown on, the regular media. But I will tell you, what I do witness as far as like testimonials is that I see I've been involved in this almost 2 years now, and a little over a year as far as the Facebook groups. I have seen so many members, I want to say, like, mature with their knowledge as far as flat earth and their confidence, and really almost kind of like grow their craft. They've kind of found their niche. They've become like the artists where they're sharing with their friends and family because they're doing art, or they're writing poetry, or they're branching out and making their own groups, or they're making their own content channels. And it's fabulous for me to watch them. It's like watching my friends grow, in this truth. That makes me happy when I'm seeing these people. I remember them joining my group, and they were maybe not scared, but very timid, and they were struggling with this as far as even dealing with talking to other people about flat earth, and now they're just like so confident and found a way to share it with other people. And I feel like that's why I'm doing this, so that these people have this place to go that they can safely grow and then go out and share the truth.
Yeah, it's nice in theory, but as you well know, we had a conversation with Zoe just before this show started, and it was about sharing on Facebook. And I said, "Oh, you're going to share the show," and she was like, "Well, actually, no, I don't share videos. I don't share my own videos on Facebook." And I understood why, because as soon as you do that, you're opening yourself up to friends, family, all the people that you know, to be ridiculed, to have stones thrown at you, to be questioned. And if you're new to it, it might be the case that you haven't necessarily got any answers for the people that you've been, to have these questions directed at you. So the closed groups, like you say, is a much more safe haven for somebody to come along in a more safe place, that they're not going to have their friends and family chuck stones at them. Just ask a perfectly benign question.
Right. And I know I've heard a lot of feedback where people say, well, that's just, it's like a wimpy way out, and you're going into this safe room and you're all talking amongst each other, but you're not changing anybody's mind. But it's really not true. And they don't necessarily understand what they're talking about because they're not in there. You don't understand that not every person that joins a flat earth group, that's a closed group because they want to go in there and learn, not everyone's at the same level. So I have people join that are like, okay, I just started looking into this. I've only been into it for 2 weeks, and they have a lot of growing to do before they can go out and share it, because they're not going to understand how to explain it to someone else. You know what I mean? And another perk would be that if they are in this group and they're learning and they're building their confidence up, and say they decide they want to become brave and they share something about flat earth on their private timeline, and then they start getting bombarded by friends and family that are saying they want to debate them. If they have trouble, then they can tag people that they know that can maybe have a little bit more education in certain areas, or some other people that can come in and help them. And that's where I think it helps as well. It's almost like a support program where if you don't know the answer, maybe one of your friends do, you know?
That's it. And not knowing the answer, I mean, maybe to you and to I'm assuming in this case, it's quite simplistic. You know, there's no curve. You can boil it down really simply if you want to. Flat Earth, there is no curve.
Right.
That's oversimplifying it. It's more people's understanding of how deception works and the layers. And you mentioned about TV earlier. That's another thing I'm hoping we'll go on to a little bit later on. But understanding the layers of deception is a fast track to knowing that you don't necessarily have to unpick every heliocentric argument that's been piled on top of a heliocentric debunking for a flat earth argument. You know, there's a preponderance of evidence for the globe. You know, there's a mass of it. For every flat earth debunking out there, there is a heliocentric debunking. It might be absolutely useless and easily debunked again if you scratch the surface. But nevertheless, anybody who looks on the surface will find there's a preponderance of evidence that we live on a globe. It's nonsense, but you'll still be flying in the face of hundreds of people that will say, well, here's this obvious globe proof. You know, here's the star rotations. They obviously prove the ground beneath your feet are moving. You know, it's nonsense, but you've got to go through that process of learning all of the debunkings with people in a safe place where you're not debating against somebody who is quite literally screaming at you, you know, in capital letters on, you know, I see it all the time.
I mean, I've often compared it to like working at retail, and I don't mean that to make it sound chintzy or cheap or anything, but I've worked in retail for a very long time. So when you're selling anything, you're not just trying to convince that person that, you know, they need this product, although product knowledge is important. You're building a relationship with that person so that they trust you and trust what you're saying. You know, and I think part of what is most important when people take information about the flat earth back to their friends and family and they're trying to explain this to them, you don't necessarily need to be completely convincing them right then. You just need to like create a spark in them so that they get interested and they're curious. They go research it themselves. I say this often that I can't sit there or stand there and hold someone's hand and do all that research for them. You know what I mean? You kind of have to get them interested in it, and then you can guide them in the right direction. And then they need to be able to really dig into it, because I don't think they're going to get the same kind of experience and what they need out of this unless they look into it on their own. I mean, that's what all of us did that are out there now trying to share the truth, is that we dug into it on our own, and we went through all the hardships and the cognitive dissonance and all that kind of stuff we had to get over on our own. So that's kind of what I encourage people to do is you don't necessarily have to completely convince them, just get them interested so that they look into it, because you're never going to change someone's mind. They have to figure it out on their own.
Yeah, it's the age-old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. David Weiss actually said to me similar about spoon feeding people when it came to, you know, he'd get a commenter, he'd offer him an answer, you know, singular, and then refer him to his website and say, you know, go to deepinsidetherabbithole.com, and there's plenty of 2-minute videos if you've got a short attention span, or, you know, half-an-hour documentaries or hour-long documentaries if you really want to get in depth. But they're normally heliocentric deceptions. Most flat Earth is based around unpicking the lies, you know, which brings us on to TV, you know, the brainwashing central that we're all, you know, afflicted by. So do you watch TV at all?
Not very often. Like late at night, sometimes I'll watch some funny old sitcoms just to kind of wind down, but normally I'm checking Facebook and YouTube and all those sorts of things. But I'm not, I don't follow any TV shows. I don't watch sports. I do not watch much TV at all. I can't say that I follow anything on TV.
I mean, I shared your testimonial on Facebook, your YouTube testimonial, and
Mm,
in that you were talking about your love of music and the way that we're programmed through that, which is something I'm certainly fascinated with. I'm exactly the same as you. I don't watch TV. My
yeah.
wife, I'll occasionally walk in and see the Kardashians on, which, you know, it does grieve me. But there we go. You know, that's her bag. Fair play. You know, she likes it. But there we go. It's one of those. The music, on the other hand, I listen to in the UK Radio 1, which is our new music station, and it's, you know, a teeny bopper station. But you
Yeah.
get all of the latest, greatest music, and it is
Right.
it's as riddled with programming as any TV station will, you know, pump out in their TV series. You know, it is interesting to pick apart the programming that goes on within music.
Well, I think when I was sharing my backstory, that was kind of like, that was one of those spur of the moment things where I was kind of feeling really down because of the, you know, the way the world is right now. And I have those moments probably once a week, but yeah, I get really frustrated because, well, everything has changed. I mean, there's so much about music that I used to love, but I can't look at it or listen to it and feel the same way anymore, you know. And same way with movies. In fact, I've noticed, I mean, probably even just 2 years ago, if I would have seen all the movies that are being, because I mean, every once in a while, even on YouTube, you see there are advertisements, and a lot of times it's for movies or TV shows coming out. And some of those movies coming out, I mean, I would have been hardcore into because they're like sci-fi stuff, you know, it's like robots and aliens and going to Mars and all this, you know, strange things. And now I just see it and I think, oh my goodness, this is programming people so much to think that this is real. I mean, this looks more real than what we're given with the NASA budget, and people will emotionally become attached to these movies just like they do like The Walking Dead and all these TV shows, and they think it's genuine or that it's going to happen someday, and it's putting that thought in their head, and I can't even bring myself to look at it anymore, you know? It's taken away that the little bit of fake joy I used to have watching, you know, movies like that. I can't really watch them very easily.
I mean, you said you made that testimonial because of how the world is. I mean, elaborate on that a little bit. What do you mean exactly?
Well, I think just I'm trying to think back how I felt that day. I think that was before even all the like Pizzagate pedophilia things were coming out, which makes me feel even worse when it comes to thinking about um, the deception and the way the elite and the leaders are in this world. But I think I was just having one of those moments where I felt very like segregated, separated from the world, different, you know, knowing things that other people don't understand, feeling like you kind of have to be fake around some of your like friends that you see, you know, throughout the day and the people that you work with and going to your slave job. And I think I was just feeling a little bit overwhelmed by all that. And it's like you can't go back to pretending you don't know how the world is really working, or you can't go back to not knowing all these lies that we were taught, you know, growing up. I can't go back and take that out of my mind, but then I have to kind of live that way, kind of keeping it to myself. But then when I say that out loud, I think, well, you really don't have to keep it to yourself. But when you don't keep it to yourself, you scare people away, you know? It was one of those moments I was having where I felt, you know, a certain way about feeling different. And I wanted to kind of get that out in that video. And then I wanted to kind of share, at that point, I wanted to share my backstory, and then a little bit of the positivity at the end, just kind of try to balance it out. But I think that probably a lot of us feel that way. And that's another reason why I made some of the groups that I did make, just to kind of be that emotional support when you feel like you don't have anyone you can talk to because no one understands. At least you can come to the group or the people that you've met in the group and have some kind of bond.
Well, that's kind of what I meant when I was saying, do you feel now that it's progressed on a bit where you can more easily talk openly with friends and family? I mean, from my personal experience, just when I made that advert for this show, I was out
Yeah.
in Birmingham Town Centre with mother-in-law and my wife's brother and so on and so forth, just
Yeah.
family. And
Yeah.
I'm making that advert on the phone and standing in the middle of the town, at the top of my lungs, join in, Flat Earth UK, whatever, doing it loud with people around me.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel in the slightest bit uncomfortable. And when I was showing them as I was editing it, I've not discussed Flat Earth with that particular part of my family, but I didn't feel even slightly embarrassed. I didn't care. I was like, this is how it is. You can take it or leave it. That's fine by me.
Yep, this is me. I think it is getting easier. Like with my fiance, who I'm the closest with, when I first started all this almost 2 years ago, I think he was a little annoyed by it and a little frustrated, maybe even just a little scared because of the things that I was talking about. And um, but things have changed with him a lot. I think that he sees that I'm so dedicated into sharing this truth and learning about it. And now I can talk freely with him about whatever I want to. And we listen to shows together a lot as well. And he gets very interested in it. I don't know if I would necessarily say that he would consider himself a flat earther, but he's very, very open-minded to listening, which it makes it a lot easier for me. Like if I tell him, Tuesday night I'm going to be set up to do a hangout and I'm going to be talking about flat Earth, he's okay with that, or like I listen to flat Earth documentaries and interviews all the time when I'm at home. Either I have my earbuds in or I have it just playing. If he wants to listen to it, then he can listen in. So that's gotten a lot easier. I talk a little bit with my mom and some friends, but most of the friends that I have that are close to me that live around me, they don't quite understand. I can't be quite as open with them, not yet. But some of them have questioned it, so it's definitely in the works.
When you say question it, does it start with the usual snipe or a bit of ridicule, or is it a fairly friendly approach?
Most of it's been fairly friendly. They're just curious. They see me putting things up mostly on Facebook, or I might mention something while we're out and about. Like, I mean, a lot of my friends know I do like moon photography, and so they'll start questioning things like that, and I kind of slip in, well, how is it that we can see these kinds of things on the moon when they're saying it's 239,000, miles away, and kind of can slip in some of those questions um, when it comes to just sharing, like even just my photography and such. But most of it's been pretty friendly. I should be more brave and I should talk about it more often.
Do you feel, I mean, this is maybe a question for you then, do you feel comfortable with your overall understanding of the heliocentric deception and flat earth answers? Can you comfortably disclose information at length when someone has a random question about the whole thing?
Well, I want to say that I think I could, but honestly, mostly what I do is I'm a keyboard warrior, is that I type answers when it's just talking to people online. So when it comes to talking to people in real life, it's completely different. So I would like to say I feel pretty confident, but you just never know until you're in that situation. You know what I mean? But I'm usually, I pride myself on being a pretty respectful person. So I would hope that it wouldn't become heated, that they would understand and that we would be able to have a good conversation. And if it ends that we have differences in opinion, then so be it. But it kind of opens that channel that we could talk about it in the future.
So I should reserve this question for the first question, but I always seem to forget that these days. How did you actually find out the Earth is flat?
So, well, I can kind of tell you how it started. It has been almost 2 years for me. It'll be 2 years in February. But February of 2015, I was very much into studying the moon. And just right before that, I was into some of the truth seeking. I was studying like things like CERN. I was studying Jade Helm 15, which was like a military exercise that was going on in the United States. And I was listening to a radio show called Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis. and he interviewed Crow 777. And Crow 777 was talking about the lunar wave. I think the show is called Lunomaly, like a lunar anomaly. And it really got me thinking, and started questioning things about the sun and the moon. Well, then, not too long after Crow 777 was interviewed by Clyde Lewis, then Mark Sargent was interviewed. And I'm talking, this had to have been like right after he did the Flat Earth Clues, because he didn't, it was, and I say this all the time, that unfortunately the interview didn't go really, really well. Like, Clyde had a lot of people that called in, and I feel like Mark wasn't able to really get his answers out. And I feel like it didn't do the Flat Earth Truth very, very much justice at the time. But it got me questioning it, so I started looking into it. And after that, I think I found out about Eric Dubay and his Atlantean conspiracy, and I think it was just a website at the time. And from there, I just started doing the outside research just on the internet. And then I don't remember how I found out that it was on Facebook, but I think I started listening to it was I think it was called the Ball Earth Skeptic Roundtables, and I got sucked into all those, and I started adding myself or joining some of the Facebook groups, and it was just like history after that. I was completely dedicated. It didn't take me long once I heard Mark Sargent and Eric Dubay talk about it that I was like, why have I always thought that the Earth was a spinning ball? It just really, really clicked for me, because I always questioned the distances to the sun and the moon. I just never understood how the sun could be that far away. How in the world could we ever possibly measure that? How in the world could we ever possibly measure even what the moon is, what it's made, or not the moon, but the sun, that it is this certain type of energy or this certain type of light if it was that far away. It never made sense to me. So all these things, it got me questioning, and it didn't take long for me to say, you know what, I think the Earth is not moving and we're not on a spinning ball. And it grew from there. And once I started joining the flat Earth groups, I realized that there was something missing as far as like a safe group, like I was explaining earlier. And around October of 2015, well, it's probably August, September, I started thinking about it, and I finally committed in October and decided I was going to make my own group. And that's when I created Flat and Happy. And from there, I was enjoying so much adminning that group that there was other people saying, I have this group and I need help with this group, and can you co-admin this group with me? And just started growing from there. And I eventually got up the courage to then start making my own videos. So I decided to create a YouTube channel too. And I thought to myself, I don't know how I'm going to, like, I have a cell phone and I have an old laptop that I think I was just borrowing at the time. I don't know how I'm going to make videos, but I figured it out. I did something, I felt like I could contribute something, make some kind of video, share my thoughts, or do some photography and make observations and share them. And it seems like a lot of people seem to connect with that. So I just keep doing it.
It's definitely one of the most positive aspects, that you can do things yourself. You mentioned
Yeah.
about moon observations. I distinctly remember pre-flat Earth, looking through the telescope at the moon and having a plane fly through view for just a fraction of a second, and it being in focus, and scratching my head and going, what's going on? This makes no sense. So, when you watched Crow 777, I'll spell it for anyone who doesn't know, CRROW 777. Did you know that he absolutely knows we're on a flat and stationary plane when you were watching him?
No, I really did not. I when I first heard him talking about the lunar wave, which is what I got sucked into in the beginning, he was not proclaiming that he thought that the Earth didn't move or that the Earth was flat. And he still won't say he's a flat earther, but he definitely knows we're not on a spinning ball. But no, I really did not know. But that got me, I already had a fascination with the moon and the sun. So that kind of just drew me in even more as far as questioning. I've always been someone that questioned the, original story on everything. And that just, I was like, I don't know what I'm seeing there on the moon. And I had no explanation for it, you know? And I know that might sound weird to the people listening. What is that? What does a wave on the moon have to do with flat Earth? But it just started making me question everything that I was taught about the moon, you know? And even like you said, you mentioned before you knew the Earth was flat, that you remember looking through a telescope and you saw this plane go by the moon, and you're like, how is that in focus? And so is the moon. Before I got into flat Earth, I remember making this observation because where I live, it's out in the country. Behind my house is a big cornfield, and in front of my house is a big field. And in the front of the house, I can get some really good video and pictures of the sun and moon. I like to call it exit. I don't like to say set. And I remember noticing that there's a giant tree out in this field. And I remember noticing that in the summer months, the sun and the moon were setting way north, and that when it was getting closer to the winter months, the sun was, or exiting, I'm sorry, exiting way farther, like getting closer to being exiting in the west. And I didn't understand why that was happening. And I remember also taking pictures of the sun at one point at 1 month, and then the sun during like the summer month, and comparing them. And I was like scratching my head, like, no one's ever explained to me why this happens. You know, everyone always just assumes the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, but that's not really true, but like one day of the year. So that was another thing that I always question, like, what are we being told, and why is it that way? Do the heliocentrists even understand why that happens? You know, a lot of people don't. But once I got into flat Earth and I started realizing, I've done some studies on the sun's path, and I started understanding why I was seeing the sun. You know, its positioning moving every day, actually. You know, between the months, the winter and the summer months. But those are just things that before I even decided that the Earth was flat, I was like, it was making me question things.
It's conversations like this that can sort of demonstrate to anybody who's watching why we're so compelled to do what we do. You know, to somebody who's living on a globe right now and they just accept all of the nonsense that they are told, there is no desire whatsoever to go out and track the sun. Whereas as a flat earther, I felt compelled to do it. You know, I was driven to do that because you find out how it works for yourself. Suddenly you realize how little you know, how much you have taken on faith, how much is belief based, and that the opposite of that is to be empowered to take ownership of where you live and looking out for the answers yourself. And that's an amazing feeling. You know, it's difficult to portray it when all you're getting is stones thrown at you, because the assumption is from the person you're talking to that you're an idiot.
And in reality, most of us that are really studying this know so much more about Earth than they can even imagine. And I know, like, when I started trying to get into making my own observations, actually documenting them so I could try to share pictures or make a video, I think it was in September of 2015, we had the blood moon, the blood moon eclipse. And it was cloudy that night, and I was so bummed because I wanted to go out and get it on video or get pictures of it. But I still went out. I got a few really good pictures. But I sat out there for 3 hours and watched this. And it was like emotional for me. And I don't know if anyone understands that, but it was like I'm sitting out there just in awe watching what's going on. And I'm thinking to myself, there's absolutely no way that that's Earth's shadow doing this. But also I'm like, I don't understand what's going on, but I don't believe the original story. Like, what am I seeing? I was in so much awe that I actually got emotional about it. And I feel that way every time I go out there and take photographs of the sun and the moon, or do any kind of videos when it comes to those observations. I feel the same way. I mean, if anything, if someone out there's, you know, debating whether they should start questioning whether the Earth is flat and motionless, at least go start trying it and making your own observations, because if anything else, you're going to enjoy it. I mean, it changed me.
I mean, on the flip side of that, how have you got on with looking at NASA and debunking their nonsense? Is that something you dabble in at all?
I don't normally get in. There's a couple things I've gotten into, like as far as looking at NASA's proofs and trying to, debunk them. A couple things about the moon, like I've gone through some of the NASA pictures, and there's some moon pictures where they're supposedly taking pictures of the moon from the ISS. And I don't remember how high up the ISS is, but it's when they take the pictures of the moon, they're taking this picture of the moon and then showing us down here on Earth, and it's the exact same face of the moon that we see all the way down on Earth. And I'm thinking to myself, how in the world did they see the exact same face when they're, how many miles up are they? Like 130 or something like that? I don't remember. It might be less than that, but I don't remember exactly. But even if it's 20 miles up, you should see something maybe just a little bit different. It was identical. So to me, it just looked like a picture that someone took on Earth of the moon and they just put it up there, and made it look like it was in outer space, things like that. But I haven't gone through a whole lot of their stuff and tried to debunk it. It just makes me disgusted to look at a lot of their pictures. But I have, when I first started getting into the Facebook flat Earth groups, we used to get together and do truth bombing. We actually would have days where we would coordinate, and everyone at the same time or between a certain couple hours, everybody that knew about it would get on all the NASA sites, all the science sites, and just truth bomb. And that was actually made the community feel like they were closer, like close knit. And it was so much fun to get on there and spread truth. So I used to be really active in that when we first, that was probably around October 2015.
I really
between
enjoyed
August
that. I took part when that happened. And
yeah, I enjoyed it too.
It was great because it gave me the confidence to actually, although I wasn't necessarily truth bombing, it gave me because there was so much carnage, there were so many messages to NASA, it was an opportunity while there was flat Earth being spewed all over the pages to actually ask a few key questions. So I got explanations from people at NASA about how they got through the Van Allen belt, and it got to the point where I was, having sharp intakes of breath as I was getting some of the answers. They were saying basically they got lucky, and you're like, oh, you can't believe they're saying this to you. No, the way they were phrasing it was, they were lucky they weren't killed. They're kind of putting that reverse spin on it, and you're like, that's your explanation. That's from NASA. Outrageous. Yeah. But you wouldn't actually get to that point. This is good 18 months ago now. It's quite a while back. But at that time, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, surely they haven't got the audacity to just barefaced lie, and they have. It's outrageous, but it was nice to see. So truth bombing was great. I don't know, maybe that'll come up again.
I know, maybe we should organize something like that. But for one thing, it was astounding when somebody would actually answer you from one of those sites, because like you said, the answers that they said was just, ludicrous. But it was also felt so good to get on these sites and all of a sudden be like, I know that person commenting and I know that person commenting, and everybody's backing each other up. And it was like an educational thing. I mean, I remember talking to some people and they're like, I really want to be involved in the truth bombing, but I don't know enough information, or I don't know what to say. And I'm like, literally, you could just get on there and be like, Earth is flat and stationary, and then leave. Just drop something. You don't have to stay there and know all the answers, but the people that participated had fun, and you can learn from other people who were really doing a good job with it, and really maybe getting through to some people. And I've had situations on other threads that had nothing to do with flat Earth where people questioned it, and then you become friends with that person through Facebook, and they might question a little bit later, and I've invited them into groups and stuff. You just never know where it's going to go. You never know who's listening that's not, talking on that thread, that they're just reading along, and it's going to plant a seed, and then they're going to go research. I mean, these are just all those little ways where the flat Earth truth is just growing. I think it's growing a lot more than people suspect,
It's like a gateway to a whole bunch of other truths. So you end up in a position where it's hard to explain to somebody that when you're digging through these truths. You mentioned Pizzagate earlier, and I've got mixed emotions on the subject, but we won't get too deep into it. But when you find things like that out, you're seeing very dark aspects of the world that we live in. But that is actually quite uplifting because you're seeing it. Finally, the veil's being lifted. Now, it's horrific, but you'd rather know than not know. You know, I don't like living in ignorance, and knowing how the world is operating and the people who are doing these things gives you a little bit more a kind of a sense of ease that you can potentially do things about it. You know, you do have a voice and you can speak out about the horrific nature of the world. That's all on the negative side. On the positive side, like I said earlier, you've got the empowerment factor, the fact that you can start doing things for yourself. You can speak out on things like Pizzagate. If it disgusts you, you can say so. You know, you don't have to accept the mainstream media explanation, wait for what CNN tell you is a justifiable reason for what's happened, or label it as fake news. You know, with that empowerment, you will ignore the news and go, let's have a little look for myself. What can I find out to my own satisfaction, rather than just being told. But that's a long old sentence, you know, that won't convince somebody on the spot that's going, well, you know, look at the moon.
Right.
That's not flat, is it?
And when it comes to things like that, like with Pizzagate, like I've video logged about my thoughts on that, and I might do it again. And I've had people tell me, you know, well, that's, you know, maybe that's happening and maybe it's not, and what are we going to do about it and how are we going to change it? Well, that's terrible attitude, you know. And if with today's technology, look what we're doing right now, and I'm doing this on my phone. You could take your phone out, and if you feel a certain way about something, you want to share your opinion, you don't know who else out there is going to resonate with your thoughts, you know. And also, because little old me might get up there and say something, I might motivate someone who is kind of scared to share their thoughts to also do it, you know. And I don't know 100% all the truth about Pizzagate, but I do know that the terrible things that involves really do happen. And if saying something, you know, and mentioning about it, and a couple people see it on YouTube, makes some kind of difference because more people look into it, and then they share it and more people look into it, then you are making a difference. I mean, if people who have never heard about Flat Earth or never heard about the atrocities like something like Pizzagate, you know, hear it from a video log or something like that, then you are changing the world a little bit. And I think it does make a difference. Absolutely.
It's a dangerous subject because on the one hand, we all kind of, I'm going to say this, we know these things occur, but how the information is presented to us and the reasons behind what information we've been given is tentative. You know, some things are there as red herrings, some things are absolute facts, some things are the truth hidden in plain sight. It's a web, a massive web of deceit. So ever since it's I don't want to say inception, ever since it's sort of coming to the forefront, myself and Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole, there you go, second mention, I'm sure you'll be chuffed, I've been back and forth on Skype every day, and every day I'll look through the videos and the new information that comes out and put a different hat on to how I feel it is in terms of how it's being presented. My feelings will never change. This stuff does happen. You know, there's some really wonderful examples of people who've put their neck on the line to get this information out there. And I'll praise Jaron Campanella of Jaronism in this regard when he talked about the Hampstead case.
Yes.
It's horrific, but unlike Pizzagate, with the Hampstead case, it's, for me at least, far more compelling because it's really in your face. It's not subtle. It's not tied up in code or innuendo. It's right there. It's right in your face. Unless you want to convince yourself that these children are trained to have stories that they can, at a pinch, you know, come up with the same explanations over and over again. It's unthinkable that could be the case. Right. Therefore, the children's testimony to me is absolutely sound. You know, it can't be anything other than what they say. Yes, there's going to be minor details that change to a small degree as they are coerced. But Jaron did a massively wonderful job of presenting it all. You know, it's in its entirety. You know, the beginning testimony and then the skewed testimony at the end, and he kind of left people to make their own decisions on how they felt about it, or whether or not they believed it to be true, whether or not they believed the children. And that took a lot of courage. But it's Flat Earth that's taken Jaron to that place, you know, and it's an amazing place to be, where you're I mean, maybe confident is the wrong word, but confident enough to say, no, God damn, I will expose this information, and to hell with consequences. If it is going to impact negatively on me, then so be it. It is worthy of people's attention. And that's another a byproduct of flat Earth. I really didn't want it to be about all the negativity about it, but it seems to have gone that way, unfortunately.
No, but I'll say one more thing just about that. The reason why the Hampstead thing is more compelling, like you said, is because you're hearing from potential victims, and it's just heart-wrenching. But I will leave that I'll leave that to the audience. I mean, if you want to research it, research it. I just actually revisited that whole story just recently because of everything that has to do with Pizzagate. And it is so hard, like you said. There's just absolutely so much deceit out there. It's so hard to tell what's right or what's wrong, or what's true and what's not. But when you were talking about, that helped. Those are the kinds of things that, being able to share those sorts of things because of confidence. It's almost like you get to a point where it's almost like sacrificial. I don't know how to explain it. Like you're giving up a part of yourself, and you're saying, I'm actually not as much concerned about the fact that this might hurt me in some way. Learning the information might hurt you in some way.
Beautifully put, because first and foremost, we're going to speak now from the standpoint that Hampstead is absolutely correct from Jaren's perspective. Now, just taking that as the standpoint, just to make this explanation a little bit easier, if that's the case, our sympathies first and foremost must be with the children, the family, the people who have suffered the abuse. However, on the next level down, you have people like Jaren, who's sacrificing his innermost to put this information out there. And while that is the standard that we should be adhering to, we should be giving people like Jaren and the Hampstead kids sympathy and support. What actually happens is they get ridiculed, they get persecuted, they are made scapegoats, and it's a disgusting way to be. I know in Flat Earth, because it's for me, like we said at the beginning of the show, it's quite a simplistic thing. We can show strength and support for each other, so that when things like Hampstead come along, there is strength in numbers. There hopefully will be other people like we are doing now that say, no, we support you in your actions. Absolutely. We want to stand shoulder to shoulder and expose this stuff. As hard and as difficult as it's been for Jaren, he's done it on his own. It doesn't take much to sort of give that sort of person support. So ultimately, hopefully there will be either resolve for the family, or it won't happen going into the future. No doubt that whatsoever it's happening to this second, right now.
Yep. And I think that's where both you and I and everyone else out there that puts themselves out there, on YouTube or on these hangouts or in their content videos, they do the same thing. Like I said, it's like you're sacrificing a part of you, first of all, for diving into this, any kind of rabbit hole of truth and learning about it, because it changes you. And also for sharing it, because you are going to come under a certain amount of harassment. I know you have, I know I have. But I think it's worth it to put that information out there, because there's so much more positive that you get from it, because it helps other people.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to put it. It is definitely worth it. On the other hand, it is kind of unfortunate, because for some people, there's no option. It is genuinely the red pill. You can't actually deceive yourself into thinking it's a ball again. You're going to live in mental torture. Once it's clear, there's no going back. So for some, heed our words. It is positive. Eventually, at the end of the road, even if you're thinking this is a nightmare, why did I ever mention to anybody that the Earth is flat? I've received nothing but ridicule. In the long run, that won't be the case. You will be better for knowing the truth. The truth is always better.
Absolutely. And I would say to people that are feeling that way, any one of you out there that right now that are feeling that way, that you regret knowing the truth and you wish you could go back because you feel like it's nothing but you're getting ridiculed and harassed, then you have choices and you can change that. You can realign yourself with different people. If there's people harassing you, you block them. You change things. And then also, I know it sounds weird, but if you can stomach it, put yourself out there and start doing the more positive things, like um, getting into a group where it's like a support group, or going out there and making observations, or make a content video where you're actually being active in the community, and you will then start to enjoy it. Go outside and look at the sun. Go out and make moon observations, or go do a moon temperature experiment, or go out and look at how flat the ocean is. Those kinds of experiments or observations, and start feeling the good side of flat Earth. Don't focus on those people that are going to ridicule you and harass you. Don't get stuck in that part of it. It shouldn't be a bad thing to know truth. You just got to realign yourself, and you can make different choices, because I think we've all been there.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it about 5 times, because at the start it was like, get into the group, but go out. Just go out.
Yeah.
That's that's what it's all about.
Yep.
Life is for living. As wonderful as this is right now, I'm really enjoying this conversation. Tomorrow I will be going for a walk and enjoying life.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Like you say, looking at the stars, looking at the sun and moon. It's nice. Life is sweet.
Yep.
This reminds me actually that what you just said about a scene in the Matrix, the first one, where you've got, I think his name's Cypher, and he's plugged into the Matrix, and he's having a meeting with the bad guys, and he's at a restaurant and he's eating a steak, and they're asking him about whether or not he'll be okay having his mind erased and being plugged back in. And he explains that while he's eating the steak, it's juicy and delicious, and it doesn't matter that it's not real, because ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, I remember that. Yep, I remember that scene.
But it's a lie.
Oh my. I know. I know. And I think that's what a lot of people want to stay that way, though, is they do want to just be ignorant. They don't. I think that's why people get angry when you bring up any kind of truth, something like flat Earth. Do not say that to me, because I don't want to question anything. They're too distracted, too much going on in their life. But I think to those of us that have pursued it, it's just more important than watching The Walking Dead, or watching a football game, or I guess the humdrum things that normal people care about. It's just like two different worlds.
Yeah, easier to convince somebody that they've been. It's easier to lie to somebody than to convince somebody that they have been lied to. Nobody wants to feel like they're a fool. And ultimately, right, at the start at least, I felt very foolish. How have I not seen this before? How could I have been so stupid? You feel like you're an idiot for having believed that you lived on a spinning ball flying through space, as opposed to being at the center of it all on a flat plane with, the stars above you and the ground beneath you. That's where we live in reality. We know it intrinsically, because we experience it every day. And that is a fundamental part of how we be, how we live. So to deny that with the spinning ball rubbish, you feel really foolish when you actually accept that. But you have to. You've got no option once you realize the truth.
Yeah, it's almost like something clicks over in your brain. And I wish I could project how I feel about it now into anyone that I talk to, because if they knew how I felt about it, like you're saying, it's laughable to think back of what we used to think was real, when in reality, everything that we looked at when we go outside and the Earth is motionless, or when we look at the sun and the moon and it's close, and we look at the sun and the moon and they look similar size, and that there's just no way that we're a spinning pear ball in space. We've always seen this from the time that we were little, but for some reason we were completely convinced otherwise. We're I don't know, we're just programmed to completely just agree with what other people tell us and not figure it out on our own. We just can't even.
We've had all the tools robbed. You said programmed. All the programming. They hide the devil in the detail of the title. It is programming, and that's what we call our TV. We're watching our programming.
Yep, absolutely. And that's why I limit what I watch. Like I said, if I watch anything, it's very late at night and it's like old funny sitcoms, and that's just kind of playing in the background. But I can't watch much else. It's just like disheartening. I can't even look at it.
That's it. You realise eventually that the TV's poison, and you're better
Yep.
off without it. Better off outside looking at the moon.
Yeah. And if it was just me, I mean, I live with my fiance. If it was just me, we would get rid of it completely. And I would have just a laptop up there and we would watch flat earth documentaries and interviews all the time. We wouldn't have a TV.
Did you want to plug any? I know they're close sites, so is it worth plugging anything that you've got in terms of Facebook?
Well, I mean, I can share I can still share the group. It's like I said, it's called Flat and Happy. It's a closed group, but that doesn't mean you can't ask to become a member. The only thing is that I look at people closely that want to try to get in, and if it doesn't look like you're at all a flat earther, I don't let people in. So if they have absolutely no evidence that they are in other flat earth groups, no friends that are like, if they don't have any like friends like I have, you know what I mean? And absolutely no evidence of being into flat earth at all, it's very hard for me to just let them in. And the only reason I do that is because you will have people out there with fake profiles, or people out there that are just want to get into groups just to harass and to debate flat earth. And that's not what that group is for.
Yeah,
So
I don't think you need to justify it, because we
yeah.
all know well and good
Yep.
that there's stones being thrown. So that is, like you said at the start, it's a safe haven, and there has to be things in place to stop the ridicule in certain areas. That's one of them. So
and I watch it very carefully, and I have co-admins that watch it with me. My YouTube channel is just Karlee Sunshine. It's just a bunch of short content videos and also video logs, just my opinions, my thoughts. So if you get on there and you listen and you like how I share my thoughts, you can subscribe.
Cool. Well, it's been absolutely wonderful having you on, Karlee Sunshine. It's been a real pleasure.
Well, thank you so much. The hour went really fast.
It always does when it's a nice conversation. So yes.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Me too. I'll say a little bit of a thank you to the chat as well. So to all of you who have joined us live, thank you very much for being here. Thanks again to Karlee Sunshine. It's been a real pleasure. I've been Nathan Oakley. I'll see you all in the next video.